The earth around me was cold and damp, and I could barely breathe. The coffin I was in was small and cramped, the sides pressing against my body, making it hard to move. My heart was pounding in my chest as I realized that I was buried alive. I was terrified. I tried to remain calm, to control my breathing, but it was impossible. The fear gripped me and I struggled against the ropes that bound my hands and feet. My throat burned from the lack of oxygen, and I knew that I had to find a way out of this coffin before it was too late. I tried to remember how I got here, but my memories were hazy. I remembered going out with friends, having a few drinks, and then everything just went black. Now I was buried alive, and I had no idea how to get out. I closed my eyes and I tried to focus on my breathing, taking long, slow breaths. The air in the coffin was stale, and I could feel myself starting to suffocate. I coughed and gagged, trying to clear my throat, but it was no use. I was running out of time. As I lay there, my mind raced, trying to find a way out. I tried to move my arms and legs, but they were tightly bound, so I honestly couldn't move. I felt a wave of panic wash over me as I realized that I was going to die, all alone, suffocate. Suddenly, I heard a sound, a faint scratching, someone from the outside of the coffin. I froze, listening intently. The scratching grew louder and I could hear the sound of dirt being moved. Someone was digging me up, I think. I tried to scream, to call out for help, but my throat was too dry. I could hear the dirt being moved faster and faster, and I knew that I had to find a way out of the coffin before it was too late. I struggled against the ropes, trying to loosen them. The scratching grew louder, and I could see a sliver of light peeking through the crack of the coffin lid. I pushed with all my might, using every ounce of strength I had left. Finally, the ropes gave way, and I was free. I pushed the lid of the coffin and I emerged into the blinding sunlight. I shielded my eyes, trying to adjust to the sudden change of light. I looked around, trying to make sense of what had just happened. There was a man standing over me, dressed in black, his face hidden with a mask. He was holding a shovel and he was staring at me, cold, very cold, unfeeling eyes. I tried to speak, but my voice was hoarse from the lack of oxygen. The man didn't say anything, he just stood there, watching me. I stumbled forward, my legs weak from being buried for so long. The man grabbed me roughly by the arm and dragged me along the ground. I tried to pull away, but he was just too strong, or I was just too weak. He led me to the car parked nearby and he opened the door. I hesitated, unsure of what to do, but the man pushed me into the car and I fell into the seat. The man got into the driver's seat and he started the car. We drove for what seemed like hours, the man silent between us. It felt deafening. Finally, we arrived at a remote location, deep in the woods. The man led me to a cabin and he pushed me inside. The cabin was dark and musty, with a single room and no windows. The man pushed me to a corner and he tied me to a chair. I struggled against the ropes, but they were far too tight. He stood over me, his eyes cold and unfeeling, just like before. The man spoke. "You're probably wondering why I buried you alive." I stared at the man, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to say or how to react. All I could do was try to stay alive, to listen. The man seemed to take pleasure in my fear. He continued to stare at me for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, he spoke again. "You see, I have a little game I want to play. I kidnap people, bury them alive, and see how long they can survive. You were lucky I decided to bring you up again." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man was a monster, a psychopath who enjoyed torturing people. I didn't know how I was going to get out of this alive. Would I get out alive? The man pulled out a knife and he began to play with it, flipping it around in his hand. "You have two options," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You can try to escape and I'll hunt you down like an animal, or you can play my little game and I might let you go." I knew I had no choice. I had to play his game and try to stay alive. I nodded my head, and the man smiled. "Good," he said. "You're a smart one. I like that." He untied me from the chair and he led me outside. I still felt weak, no energy. We were in the middle of the woods, with no one around for miles. The man handed me a shovel and he pointed to a patch of ground. "Dig," he said, "and don't stop until I tell you to." I started to dig, my muscles aching from the effort. The man stood over me, watching me intently. I knew that I had to keep going no matter how hard I try. I feel like my life depended on it. Hours had passed and I dug deeper and deeper into the ground. The man was nowhere to be seen and I started to wonder if I was alone, if he had abandoned me, if I could escape. But then I heard a sound. A voice. "Good job," he said. "You can stop now." I climbed out of the hole, exhausted and covered in dirt. The man was standing over me, his eyes cold and unfeeling as always. "Now it's my turn," he said. He pushed me back into the hole and he began to shovel dirt right on top of me. I tried to scream, but my mouth was full of dirt, and I struggled against the weight of the dirt, but it was no use. I was being buried alive again. I had almost no energy left. My arms were numb, my legs were numb, and I was exhausted. There was no way I can keep up with the pace that the dirt was filling in. I knew that I had to find a way out, or I would die. I struggled against the weight of the dirt, trying to make a hole big enough to crawl through. Then finally, I felt a sliver of air, and I gasped for breath. I pushed my way out of the hole, gasping for air. The man was nowhere to be seen, and I knew that I had to run the moment I climbed out. I stumbled through the woods, my body weak and trembling. I didn't know where I was going or how I was going to escape, but I knew that I had to keep moving, or the man would catch me. Hours passed, and I stumbled upon a road. The car was coming, and I flagged it down. The driver was hesitant to stop, but I begged him to help me. He called the police, and they arrived a few moments later. I told them everything about the man who had kidnapped me and about the game he had forced me into. They searched the woods, but they never found him. Nobody who met the criteria I had described. I was left with the memories of that horrifying experience, with fear and the pain etched into my mind. I knew that I would never be the same again, that the experience had changed me forever. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I can still feel the weight of the dirt pressing down on me, suffocating me. The memory of the man's cold, unfeeling eyes still haunt me, and I wonder if he's still out there, waiting to play a sick game again, with somebody else. Hell, maybe even me again. But I tried not to let it consume me. I tried to focus on the good in my life, the people who love me, and the experiences that bring me joy. I tried to remind myself that I survived, that I made it out alive, and that I'm strong enough to overcome anything now. Still though, the memory of being buried alive lingers like a ghost that will never quite be exorcised. And sometimes in my darkest moments I wonder if I will ever truly be free from the horrors of that experience.